Hello, good morning. My name is Esther and I'm a member of the Children's Church team. No, I'm not doing Teddy Church this morning. I'm doing something based on the reading in church today. But I have got a teddy with me. This is Willem. Willem is my favourite teddy. He was made for me by a friend of mine in Holland. Her name was Wilma, so I called the teddy Willem, and he travels with me everywhere. So if you see me in church one day with my handbag, ask to meet Willem, because he's definitely in there. So today's story is a parable. Now, a parable, as we know, is a story that Jesus will tell to give meaning to something. And this is the parable of the talents. Now, in the story, imagine that the man who we're talking about is God and that his servants are us, the people. So this man, who's very wealthy, decides to go on a long journey. And what he decided to do is give his money to his servants to look after and make sure they don't waste in his absence. So he calls over the first servant and says, "Here is 5 talents. Now, a talent is worth a lot of money nowadays, probably millions. So that's a lot of responsibility." And he said to the servant, "Make sure you put it to good use. You don't waste it. Look after it and give it back to me upon my return." The second servant he gave 4 talents to and said exactly the same. Put it to good use, don't waste it, look after it, and I'll have it back on my return. And he said the same to the third servant, who he gave 1 talent to. Now, whilst he was away, obviously these servants had to look after this money. And we'll see now what happened when the man came back, because after a long while, he came back and he was very curious to find out what his servants had done with that money. So he called over servant number 1 and said, "Okay, what have you done with it?" And the servant said, "I've done very well. I know how much you wanted me to look after this money and do my very best with it. I invested it wisely, looked after it, and look, I've doubled it. Here is 10 talents. The second servant said roughly the same. "Master, I've done very well for you. I've invested it wisely. I've done well with it. I've doubled the money. Here you go. Here is 4 talents. So now it was time to find out what servant number 3 had done with it. So the master called him over and said, "Okay, let's hear your story." And servant number 3 said, "Master, I know how much you value that money. I didn't want to lose it, didn't want to waste it. I dug a hole in the ground, put it in there, covered it over, and waited. And when I knew you were coming back, I dug it up again, and here you go. Here is your talent back, all intact." The master said, "I'm really disappointed in that, because I gave that money to you to put to good use, to do well with, not to waste, but to look after. And you've done nothing with it. You completely wasted it." Now, what that story is trying to tell us is that God has given all of us gifts and skills to do our very best with. Some of us are brilliant mathematicians. That's not me, but some people are. And they ought to be putting that skill to good use. Other people are very good at English, or maybe very good at sports. Or maybe some people are brilliant at doing gardens for people. Whatever skill or gift we have, given to us by God, we ought to do our very best with. And if you don't know what your gift or your skill is, maybe ask your parents or your carers who look after you. You know, what is my skill? Because sometimes we don't recognise it in ourselves. And do your very best with it. And if you recognise a gift or a skill in somebody else, compliment them and tell them how brilliant they are at it, because that's what people need as well, to know and to hear that we're good at things. The gifts and skills that God has given us, we must put to good use and we mustn't waste. I hope you liked that story. Willem did. He listened intently. We're going to say goodbye now. Goodbye. Take care.